Good evening, Demon fans, and welcome to the Demonland podcast. My name is Andy, and tonight we have a special treat for you. In a moment, we'll be airing the interview we conducted with Melbourne Football Club's General Manager of Football Operations, Josh Mahoney, to discuss Trade Week and other areas that Josh oversees at the club. If you'd like to join our program tonight after the interview to discuss any of the topics that we're going to talk about after that, you can call us on 039016 3666, or you can Skype us at Demonland31. If you're listening to the show live, you can join us in our chat room where you can ask questions or post comments by heading over to demonland.com/podcast. If you're listening to this at your leisure via SoundCloud on demonland.com or via iTunes or an Android podcasting app, be sure to subscribe to the show to receive updates when a new show drops. Don't forget to leave us a favourable review, and that can help us help more people find us. You can follow us on Facebook at facebook.com/Demonland31, on Twitter at Demonland, on Instagram at Demonland31, or YouTube. You can search for Demonland Podcast, and you can get to listen to some of the interviews that we've conducted with current and past players, coaches and officials. Or if you just love talking about the Ds like us 24/7 all year round, why not join up to demonland.com and chat with other Demon fans? It's completely free. Now, with all that out of the way, here's Josh.
Josh Mahoney, thanks for taking the time to join us on the Demonland podcast. Dermot Brereton said we won the trade period, but Terry Wallace gave us a C+. If you're marking your own work, how would you rate our performance during trade week?
First of all, Andrew, Jason, thanks for having me on your show. Everyone's got different opinions on trade periods, and I think you can get caught up looking at everyone's ratings. And in the end, all that we can do is we went into a trade period wanting to address a few things on our list, and we walk away saying that all those have been addressed. And I think I've spoken about previously, we were a bit nervous last year with Max Gawn's our only ruckman. We needed a mature age ruckman to come in and play, and to bring Braden Pruce in was a good for us. Also, we need some outside run, and Cade Colin Jasny had been targeted for a period of time, so we think he's able to come in and play that role. And when Jesse was indicating he wanted to return to Perth, we looked at our options, and when we thought that Stephen May was available, we think he's exactly the type of player we need back in our defence. So, in terms of ratings, we think it was a positive trade period for us, and that's all we really look for every year.
To us on the outside, it seems some clubs are almost obsessed with winning individual trades, while others take a more holistic approach and look at the bigger picture. Is that a fair assessment? Are clubs like Essendon harder to deal with?
Oh, you can get caught up during trade period, like you said, trying to win every individual trade, and you see some draft picks get exchanged that people scratch their heads at different times. But I think our attitude through all the trade periods and why we've been able to get deals done is that we look at the trade period in totality. And as I've mentioned before, it's going there with a strategy, who we want to get. We wanted to improve our draft position as well. We're able to do that. So I think you can get caught up if you go trade by trade. Yeah, there's some that people on the outside might say you win. Some people say you might lose in others. But in the end, for us, it's the overall trade period. So, it's an interesting time dealing with some clubs. And some clubs got different philosophies which hold up trades and make them get longer to get done. But that's part of being in a competition with 17 other clubs.
Josh, so much of what happens in trade week is now played out in the media. How accurate is the picture that the fans get through things like trade radio? We heard with the Jesse Hogan situation, we were told that Freo had dropped out of the race. I'm guessing we only hear a small fraction of what's really going on behind the scenes.
Some's accurate and some isn't. And that's probably why it's difficult as a club that you can't get caught in reacting to all the media reports, because once you react to one and say that's not true, when you don't respond, you're almost assuming that it is true. So Our approach is we talk when there's something to say. And yes, we want to keep our supporters and members updated as much as possible, but we certainly don't want to get in giving daily updates as well, because there's a lot of work getting done behind the scenes to get deals done. And there could be times when any sort of media announcement can actually impact the deal getting done, and obviously our supporters and members don't want that. So some are accurate and some aren't. Some clubs like to play things through the media at different stages. Again, we like to just tell things how it is, just be honest if the deals we're looking to get done, but we certainly don't want to give any information that might inhibit a deal getting done or a player of interest.
Speaking about that sort of the backroom stuff, just can you take us through the mechanics of how Trade Week works? It's a busy week. Are you the only one taking calls and meetings? Who else is in the team, and what does each do? Take the Jesse Hogan trade. You were dealing with Fremantle, but it was also the Gold Coast trade for Stephen May was reliant on that. Who's speaking to who? Is it all just you, or are there other people involved?
No, probably first of all, it's certainly not all me. We've got a team of people doing some work, and the role that I play within that is ultimately a lot of the decisions have to go through me in the role that I'm in. But fortunately, we've got a team of people who are so experienced in their role. Jason Taylor, Todd Viney, Tim Lamb's moved into a really important role with our trade period now. Simon Goodwin, Brendan McCartney's also on our list management team, David Chippendale from finance. So it's really a group and a team effort, and we all play our roles within trade period. Mine really is to be represent the club and to be the voice of the club for media and updates, as we've mentioned earlier, and also to be involved in all those sort of conversations with clubs. But Tim Lamb would be our main person who's the contact with other clubs. So he's the guy doing a lot of the groundwork early days, a lot of the work during the season, along with Todd Viney and Jason Taylor. So a lot goes into the trade week, but a lot of it is about preparation before that week, and conversations have started for next year's trade week already. So planning allows us to get a lot of things done, and that planning happens throughout the year.
When did the club become aware that Jesse might want to go home? And at that point, did you try and persuade him to stay, or did you quickly decide to make the best of the situation and use it as leverage on something else?
There's probably been a conversation at the end of every year with Jesse, probably for the last 2 or 3 years. And he's looked at it at different stages, but decided to stay. And for the first time at the end of this year, in a conversation with Simon Goodwin at the end of the year, he indicated that if we could get a deal done, his preference would be to return to Perth. So it was probably then that it was indicated to us. And we said to Jesse all along, as I've said publicly, is we'll see if we can get a deal done, but if we can't, he was happy to stay, and we're happy to still have him as a Melbourne player as well. But as it worked out the best thing for Jesse and for us. The deal was an interesting deal in the end. Probably with Stephen May becoming available, we didn't think he'd be available until another 12 months. And as soon as there was a chance that he may be leaving Gold Coast, that played a role in us and looking to get a deal done with Jesse. And the way it all panned out, yes, we had to wait on other deals, and it was extremely frustrating, but really happy with the result in the end.
It's been said that we'd been interested in May for a while. How far back does that go? Did you have a number of different strategies to try and get him to the club if the Hogan trade didn't eventuate?
Not really for this trade period. We didn't have any other strategies because in the end we knew we had to give up a good pick for Stephen, and we didn't have a first round pick with our trade that we did for Jake Lever last year. So there wasn't really any other strategies to get him in this year, and that was probably a key part as well. That right now he indicated that Melbourne was the club he wanted to join. You look forward he turns into a free agency next year again, and all the clubs are back in the market. And while we thought we had a competitive advantage this trade period, we thought we had to maximise that. And so that was an important factor for us. But with all players, Cade Colin-Jasny was followed from his draft year. He's been up in Gold Coast for 5 years, so our recruiters liked him in his draft year. So that gives an indication of how long we follow players. And if we've done a lot of research on players during the recruiting process, that we already have a fair idea of the type of characters they are. We then would meet with them again post-season, and it probably depends on the player how many years work we've done on it, but it's not something that's brought up at a list management meeting at the end of the year and then we go and do it. There's a lot of planning that goes into that.
Josh, in the final wash-up, we were able to secure a couple of picks in the 20s as well. how important was it to trade up closer to the top of the draft? And is that something you set out with? Is that a goal you set out with, in mind at the start of the trade week?
Yeah, going at the start of the trade period, that was something we wanted. We wanted to get a couple of picks in the second round and potentially move into the first round. But yeah, we think with that range we're in now, with pick 23 and 28, there'll be some good players in that range for us. And our recruiting team have shown to pick some really good players, not only in that range, but in the latter part of the draft as well. So we've got a lot of confidence in the work that our recruiting team do and the type of players they bring in. And you just have to think to last year with Charlie Spargo and Bailey Fritz being second-round picks. So although we're not promising 18 games and 24 games out of those players, that'll be second rounders. We think they'll be good players within that range for us. And the guys doing a lot of work now on those players. There's something different this year with the draft, the ability to live trading to happen on draft night, which be interesting to see how clubs approach that. And we're certainly prepared for a few different options that might come on that night.
When it comes to the question of taking a punt on a younger player in the draft or going for a known quantity via free agency or the trade table, is there an overarching philosophy that governs the process, or is it all assessed on a case-by-case basis? And does that change depending on where the club is in its cycle, with us arguably being in our Premiership window right now?
I could probably take an hour to answer that question because it's a number of different factors. You've touched on a few of them. If you look at our history of trades and how we've approached the draft over the last 5 years, there was a period when we were down the bottom of the ladder. We had high draft picks that our approach was to maximise our drafting opportunity, and we wanted to get a lot of top 10 picks in, which we were able to do. I think it was about 8 top 10 picks over a 4-year period. And as our team matured, we were able to bring in, that was a lot of the young players. We want to get some young talent to come in and play together. And then over the past few years, we've been able to bring some more mature age players. Again, we've been able to trade second round picks at different stages for players like Bernie Vince, Jake Melcham, Sam Frost and Michael Hibbert, to name a few that have come in over that time. So it does change depending on where your list is at. You have to be aware of that. In terms of preferences, we've got a lot of qualities we look for in a player, and we take the date of birth away when we're looking for that. In the end, if it's an 18-year-old that ticks the criteria compared to a 23-year-old, a 28-year-old, we'll just bring those players in if we think they can play a role and to help us get better each year.
Josh, just tell us a little bit about Braden Press. It seems counterintuitive that a ruckman looking for more opportunities would go to the club with the game's number one ruckman, but Melbourne must obviously have a plan for him to lure him over, and as you said earlier, Max certainly needs the support.
Yeah, I'm not sure why there's such discussion about it. I always would like to learn off the best in whatever job I'd go into, and that was Braden's approach. He wanted to learn the ruck craft off the best player, and that is Max Gawn at the moment. And when Max caught up with Braden and he was part of our presentation, Max wants to develop Braden as well, and he liked that idea. He liked the idea of having a ruck coach in Greg Stafford to work with him as well. And he's still only a young player. He started late. He was from Queensland originally. He's been in the system now for 3 or 4 years, and he feels like he's still got a number of years of development left in him, and we certainly feel that way as well. What it does give for us is some flexibility and how we want to use Max through the year. He played every game this year, which was a credit to his preparation in his pre-season. But we like the flexibility to be able to play Braden at different stages within the team. There'll be stages where we may play 2 rucks, there'll be stages where Max might play forward for different stages, and we think that Braden gives that flexibility for us. So we thought it was great for the club that he chose to come here, but it's also a real positive move for Braden as well in his development as a ruckman.
Yeah. Josh, moving away from trade talk and onto a couple of other issues, we've had a spate of foot injuries in the past couple of years. Was that just bad luck, or does the club really need to review things like the surface of Gosh's paddock or the way players were training?
Oh, that's the period we've been in for the last month and a half, really, is reviewing all our programs. And one of the things you look at is injuries, and if there's any trends in injuries. In relation to foot injuries, there has been a trend across the competition, which is not just for us. So it's something that we're looking at, and we think there's a few little triggers that we have to address. But overall, some of it is a bit of bad luck with particular players. You can't really get rid of every injury. Our injuries overall were very good this year. It was probably our injury games were dominated only by 5 or 6 players. And apart from that, we had a lot of players play every game this year. I think about 7 played every game, and over 13 or 14 played over 20 games for the season to be available either AFL, VFL. So overall, our injuries were very good for the year. It was just some key players that missed crucial times, and that's obviously the main thing that we want with our high-performance team is to get our best players available every game. So part of the review was foot injuries, but that comes into an overall review which looks at everything, looks at where our progress in hamstrings, looks at our progress with our first and second year players, how good it was that they were able to play a number of games. And so that's all part of our reviewing process. In terms of Gosh's Paddocks, it's a terrific surface that we've had a period of time, but we play at a number of different venues. So it's all things that are factored into it, and we'd love to have every player available every week. Reality is you're probably going to have 100 injuries for the year, injury games lost, and we got to make sure that we do the best we can to make sure our players are available as much as we can.
Josh, you came to the club in 2008. You've endured the darkest of the dark years along with the rest of us. How was it for you personally to finally see some reward last season? And tell us about your emotions watching and celebrating those 2 finals wins.
Yeah, it has been a interesting time that I've been at Melbourne Footy Club, and it's been personally great for me to be on that journey with the club, and I've learned a lot through that period. And the opportunity the club first gave me as an assistant coach to Dean Bailey, and then move into administration and to take on the extra roles and responsibilities that I've been able to do each year is it's been great that the club has looked after me in that way. My best moment this year was really standing up probably in the coach's box just before the Geelong game, the first final, and I really enjoyed looking out of the coach's box and seeing a huge crowd there, and predominantly Melbourne, and then to see the excitement on people's faces, and then to see the way we played and the way we attacked the game. It started to show that that's a plan we put in place from 2013, is we wanted to play a tough brand of footy that would stand up in finals. We want to put together a young, exciting list, and that all came together on that night. So it was a really proud moment, but it's only just really the start for us, and we want to be a team that is playing in finals every year, and it's just the start for us. And our approach, basically since we were knocked out in the final against West Coast, is how can we get better? How can we get better in every area of the club? How can we get our list to be better? How can every staff member get better? And we liked the little taste that we had. It tasted pretty good, and we want to continue that.
So going into the 2019 season, how hard is it going to be to keep the players focused and hungry and not fall into that trap that it's just going to happen? Is that a risk with a young and experienced list?
Not hard at all. The discussions that we had at the end of the season, every player to a man spoke as I spoke previously about this is just the start of something, and they see so much improvement in them individually but also as a team. And if it's an indication of how many players have been coming into the club in this off-season, on Friday we probably had 15 or 16 come in when they're supposed to be on holiday. So if there's any indication already of the way the guys have approached their rehab, either from injury or the way they're approaching their off-season programs, we haven't got any hint of it at all. And, I think everyone from the coaching staff, the off-field staff, recruiters and the players are really keen to make sure that was the start of something. So no hint of that at all, but we certainly want to hit on it if we see it drifting in at any stage into anyone's mindset.
Can you give us a bit of an update on sort of the players who are recovering from post-season operations? Clary's had the 2 shoulders operated on, and also perhaps Jake Lever's recovery and return.
Yeah, so we had a few post-season operations. I think it was about 13 or 14 in the end. There's quite a few shoulders that were done, and as you mentioned, Clayton Oliver had 2 shoulders. He actually brought forward his second shoulder operation by a couple of weeks just to get him over and done with. And
right.
He's back. He'll be running tomorrow. Will be his first run. A lot of other players, Jack Viney, Christian Petrarca, James Harms, have all started running this week. Billy Stretch as well. So they're all progressing really well. Jake Lever's just going through his different rehab. I think he started running at the end of the season. He's just been progressing his running. In terms of return date, we won't be rushing him back at any stage, so we haven't got real definitive timelines for him, but he's progressing really well and has had no hiccups in his rehab. He'll be going over to America to do an intensive rehab with his knee, similar to what Christian Petrarca did at a similar time through his knee rehab. So he'll be doing that in January, and we think when he comes back from there, he'll be starting to really build up and start doing some more training. So overall, everyone who's had operations are recovering well, and I'd see no one being inhibited in terms of starting any pre-season games or round one, apart from Jake Lever.
Josh, we've got two last questions for you. You spoke earlier about your time as an assistant coach and now moving more into an administrative and oversight role. Can you see yourself in the CEO's job one day? And did you have your hat in the ring to replace Peter Jackson?
Yeah, I think I was part of that process, and it was great to be invited into that process, and good for me to go through it. The CEO role is a different role, and it's football is one component of it, but there's a lot of different elements that you have to understand, and I think that's my approach to my role at the moment as general manager of football. As I like to know a lot of the club things and help out in different ways and understand more. So, yeah, that is a pathway that I may look at taking, but I also understand that my role is also getting bigger every year. The introduction of women's football 3 years ago added another element to the role. We're doing more and more work down at Casey with our VFL team and our VFLW team. So that, again, is another project to be working on. We've got some work on facilities projects that we're working on. So it's not as if I'm not getting developed and getting new things thrown at me every year. So it's really a perfect role for me now. I love footy. I love talking about footy, and I love business. So to be able to combine those two things is a perfect role for me at the moment. But I'm still only young in terms of administration, and wrapped to have a period of time under both Paul Roos and Peter Jackson. In terms of mentors, you couldn't find two better mentors, and from the early interactions we've had with a month and a half with Gary Pert, I think we're going to have the same relationship as well. So looking forward to learning more as we go forward.
And one final question for you, Josh, and we could do a whole separate interview talking about your playing days, but you won a flag with the Power in 2004, the pinnacle of a player's career. Where would a Demons Premiership fit in relation to that, particularly given where we've come from?
Yes, it's. I don't think you can ever go past being part of a Premiership as a player, but I think part of being the Premierships is being involved in the whole journey and the pathway there, and to be part of something and to play a role and to see a guy like Nathan Jones or Max Gawn or Tom McDonald, Neville Jetta be part of something, that'd be a really proud moment. And in the end, that is essentially what my role is, to give every player that comes to Melbourne Football Club an opportunity to win a premiership. And that's all the planning that we do. That's why we have the best coaches. That's why we have the best staff and the best programs, is to give them that taste, that ultimate glory, which is a premiership. And it'll be a great moment. But as you know, in this industry, probably by the second interview, we'll be asked about, what about back-to-back? So it turns on pretty quickly, so we'll have to be ready to go again.
Excellent. Well, we want to thank you for your time today. Really appreciate it. And, go D's. Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Well, that was Josh Mahoney. Thank you to Melbourne Football Club for allowing Josh to come on the program tonight. Grapeviney, welcome. How are you?
I'm excellent, Andy. Good interview with Josh. Very grateful, as you said, for his time and for the club for supplying him. So,
anything you take away from that interview?
Well, I thought the most interesting bit was the reference to the 100 injury games that's sort of planned for the year or expected, which sort of works out over the list at about sort of 2.5 games per player. So I'd never heard that metric before. So it's an interesting one in terms of what the club expects over a season as part of natural attrition.
Yeah, you don't. It's something us as supporters probably don't think about those things, but obviously the club sort of keeps their eye on it, and there's probably so many things like that, so many indicators that we just have no idea about, and that they've got their finger on. But what stood out for me, I was quite...
Yeah, and those insights that we were going to learn through Binman, of course, are now denied to us. So, we'll take any crumbs we can get.
So what I liked about the interview, the fact that I think he said 13 or 15 of players had come back to the club already and were doing some stuff at the club. We all know that they get programs over the summer and they go on holidays, and you see on their Instagram feeds them, amongst going to basketball games and baseball and football, whatever they're doing. They're also training in gyms and stuff, but it's good that some of the guys that are still here or have come back already are back at the club and probably doing weights and some extra training, and just love to see stuff like that. We appreciate that they have to have break time and all that, but it's good to see them, enthusiastic and back on the training track.
Yeah, I think we got an idea from Max probably at the best and fairest. I think he made sort of mention of a similar thing, that quite a few players had already sort of returned in a way. I noticed on Instagram quite a few players that have gone away together, Sam Wiedemann and Jake Lever. And Alex Neil-Bullen, I think I saw them going for a run and kicking a footy. So, I suppose having advanced as far as we did in the finals this year, the players would be itching to get back and get cracking again, I'd imagine.
Yeah, and you want sort of play. I mean, obviously you want them to have a break and to enjoy themselves, but you also want them to come back sort of in tip-top condition, ready to fight it out another year. And I think the fact that we got so close last year would, it was quite obviously disappointing for the players. They'd be itching to get back there and sort of not skip a beat and get back into it.
Yep.
So if anyone listening wants to join us tonight, give us a call, 0390163666, or you can Skype us on Demonland31 or join us in the chat room on demonland.com/podcast. And just a few things we might talk about tonight. It won't be a long show. The draw came out a couple of weeks ago. Grapeviney, were you happy? Were you happy with the draw as a whole?
Yeah, yep, very happy. It's tough, but that's what you expect when you finish in the top part of the ladder and you get the hard end of the draw. But it's good commercially. We've got a number of big game fixtures in addition to the usual blockbusters that we've got. 3 Friday nights, 9 home games at the G. I know they've made a big deal about 13 free-to-air appearances, but I had a look at this year's fixture, the 2018 fixture, and we had 13 free-to-air games this year too. So
okay.
That's not an improvement, but still pretty good nonetheless. What were your thoughts?
Yeah, look, the one that I'll just say off the bat, almost every criticism I heard of our draw, through of the Facebook comments on our website, people were complaining about the hard draw. Well, you got to expect that if we want to finish high up on the ladder, we're going to get those draws. What do people expect us to have a crap year just so we can get an easy draw and have a tilt? It doesn't work that way, unfortunately. We'd like a fairer a fairer draw for everyone, meaning you either play everyone once or play everyone twice. But the twice is obviously not an option due to the amount of games, unless you cut down the amount of teams dramatically. So that's not going to happen, and I think it's too short a year if you just play everyone once. So it's
it'd be terrible, I think, to cut the length of the footy season.
Yeah.
I mean, I want more footy, not less.
That's right. So, look, that's not going to happen. So we've got to play with what we're given, and we finished 4th, so we're going to get the harder draw. And if we're fed income, and then we should be able to beat anyone anywhere. I was disappointed.
And a tough draw was very good for us at the end of this season.
Yeah,
it stood us in good stead for the finals.
Yeah, a couple of things. Look, I'd like to ditch eventually the Darwin games. I know we get money for it, but for me, I think once we start playing a few good seasons on end, the money will come from other places, and we can ditch those games because we're giving up sort of that an advantage. So I don't like that aspect of it. Plus the travel and the return. I mean, it didn't affect us this year so much, but I'd like to get rid of that. Happy with the Friday night games. Would have liked perhaps one more Friday night game, but but we'll work on that in the coming years. Round one, I was a bit disappointed. I would have liked to have got a bit more of a blockbuster for round one. I'm happy to play Port at home rather than have to travel round one. And I'm not going to say, it's an easy game and I like that, but yeah, all right, that's a good thing. But, Collingwood playing Geelong, I would have liked to have played either Collingwood or Geelong. And I think, the fact that we were able to get such big crowds for our two finals, I think it justifies us being able to get a blockbuster round one. But we'll work on that for next year.
Yeah.
Anything else in that draw stand out for you?
Look, the other thing, obviously this, now we seem to be rotating the Queen's Birthday home game with Collingwood, which is fair enough after having it exclusively for so long. Obviously, it's come in a year when Anzac is also an away game against Richmond. I wouldn't be surprised if the club, even though technically next year should be our Queen's Birthday home game, I wouldn't be surprised if the club bypassed on that, which would then mean we have a single home game public holiday next year and every year thereafter. So rather than having 2 years off and then, missing both games 1 year and getting both the next, I think the club would probably want it to be one home game a year, wouldn't they?
Yeah. I would have liked them to have sort of started that this year. Somehow, it's hard to do that because we've both got that. But
we swapped with Richmond. And
if we could have
had Queen's Birthday for so long, it's hard to complain.
Yeah, we're going to have to be able to get that back onto 1-1. We're going to have to take the hit 1 year, and I wonder whether the club would do something like that. Perhaps that's a question for Gary Purdon, not Josh Mahoney.
It's worth doing now though because all three clubs are up the top of the ladder.
Yeah.
We're getting return fixtures against them anyway.
Yep.
So we're playing both Collingwood and Richmond twice next year. So do it while the return games are getting high attendances, and it doesn't really matter. It's not going to affect the gate next year, I would have thought, if all clubs continued to be, somewhere near the top.
Yeah, as you said, we're going to play Richmond and Collingwood twice this year again. So hopefully... hopefully we can get big crowds. I think we play them both later in the year, so if we're all up thereabouts, again, top four, or vying for top four, I think we play Richmond, then Collingwood in round 20 and then round 21, followed by a home game against Sydney on a Friday night. So if we're top four, that's 3 massive weeks in a row. That could be really good going into finals, and
Yep.
Happy with the draw. The games that we do play, I'm just having a look at the games we do play in the top end. We've got Adelaide in round 11, and then on a Saturday, and then we don't play the Queen's Birthday game until the Monday. So that's probably good in terms of recovery. I'm happy with that. Then the West Coast game, we play them. I think we play the Alice game. We play them in Alice later in the year, round 18 on a Sunday. And I wasn't happy that we're then playing on a Sunday, and then we're coming to play on a Saturday against St Kilda the next week at Metricon. Metricon State. It's not Metricon. It's Marvel Stadium now.
Although Alice, is a much more reasonable climate than Darwin, so. Getting the break is so important. And does it work out that after the Queen's Birthday Is that when our bye is?
Yes, it is. That's correct.
Yeah.
So it's Monday,
And
and we don't play till
that comes
Saturday.
as a result of talks between AFLNT, the MFC and the AFL. And this is the whole issue about the continuation of the NT deal. And what they've had to sacrifice is having the Alice game, which was this year billed very successfully as the heart of the nation game. They've had to sacrifice that as part of the Indigenous round. So that Doug Nicholls round will happen for the Darwin game rather than for the Alice game.
Oh, okay.
And that's to give them the bye after Darwin as opposed to after Alice. Yeah.
Well, we don't have it's not, the bye isn't directly. It's a couple of weeks.
No,
after
but you got a
that,
9-day break and then a long break after that. So that's pretty good scheduling.
Yeah, look, I'm happy. On the whole, I'm happy. It's a tough draw, but if you're going to be contenders, then you've got to beat anyone that's come up against. So, yep, I'm happy, and we'll give it a bash. What else has been happening in? A
bit of discussion about the about captaincy.
Yeah, I was going to bring that one up.
Yep.
So that wasn't. I don't think there is any internal discussions or anything. I posted
newspaper discussions, is it?
Yeah, so I posted that thread this morning, and I have I like to post any Melbourne news I'll post, and whether it's ridiculous or not. So it's a slow news day type of article, and Jay Clark is the master of creating a fire where there's no smoke, because the way he made it sound is if the D's face a delicate captaincy call on Jones. Well, is it really? I mean, the guy finished 4th in the best and fairest. Look, he's coming to the end of his career. He's got a couple years left. You wouldn't strip him of his captaincy yet. And I know there's some people saying that, if he's not going to be playing every game, I can't see him being dropped at the moment. If he's getting 4th in our best and fairest, he'd have to drop off significantly at the moment to warrant having the captaincy stripped from him. And I don't think it's a discussion for the moment.
I can't see it happening this year. As you say, it's a Jay Clark special. I worked in newspapers a long time, and there's a real art to writing a story like that is not based on anything, yet ends up being highly sort of speculative. But you're right, people have raised it on the forum before, and Jones's position is interesting just in the sense that thanks mainly to James Harms, Jones has been pushed out of the starting midfield. And found himself on a wing more often than not this year. So it's going to be interesting to see sort of how he has to adapt his game, given the youngsters coming through. Petrarca may or may not spend more time in the midfield next year. But you'd certainly think sort of, Oliver, Viney, Harms and Brayshaw are ahead of Jones.
Yeah, and I think Jonesy's role is definitely going to change. He'll play more on the wing. He might play more on the half-back, like in a Jordan Lewis type role, as Jordan sort of maybe transitions out of the team at some stage towards the end of his career or at the end of his career. So, look, I wouldn't be changing anything now. I think the fact that Viney didn't play a full season this year, I don't think...
exactly.
I don't think you could... And we don't know what's happening with his foot. Hopefully everything's good now, but we know with that injury things can flare up. So you wouldn't want to have Viney out for half the year, Jones strip Jones's captaincy. I don't think it's the right time to do that.
No, not at all. And look, he finished, it was 4th, I think, wasn't it, in the best and fairest?
Yeah.
So the FD don't think it's time to go either.
No.
They rate his, not just his game, but his leadership, I'd imagine. So I can't see it happening.
And look,
this year, no.
That article, they highlighted 5 teams which could have captaincy issues or calls that needed to be made, and we were one of them and they decided to lead with us on that front. But no, I think there's there's no smoke, there's no fire, there's nothing. I don't think the club is facing a delicate captaincy call on Jones, and certainly not yet. And you know what, I can't, if we stripped him of the captaincy, were to win a premiership, and that's getting well ahead of myself, and but I can't imagine Jones not being the one to have his hand first on that cup. We've got a call coming through, so let's take this. Good evening. You're on the air with Demonland. Hey, who am I talking to? Sorry there. I had the volume down. Good evening. How you going?
G'day, yeah. Excellent. It's the first time I've actually managed to listen to this live, so my first opportunity to phone in.
Oh, not a problem. So who am I talking to?
It's time.
It's time. G'day, it's time. How you going? And it is time.
It is time. I used that name many years ago when I first signed up. I don't know, 07 or 08 or something, and we've been waiting ever since. But it's looking like it's finally happening.
Well, let's hope so.
A couple of things I wanted to say. The first was, I just think this is fantastic what you guys are doing with the podcast. I think it's one of the great things that Demonland's done. I think you guys are doing a great job, and it's just fantastic the people from the club that have been prepared to come on, and the sort of information we've got. It's just tremendous. Good on you guys.
Yeah, no, thank you very much.
Yep.
And I have to thank the club for assisting us with getting the people on. They've always been very gracious with their time, and really appreciate it. Thank you.
It's fantastic. So I had a couple of things I wanted to discuss. Given that we're very close to, we're only a few days away now from the delisted free agents that period coming to an end, and that we're heading into the draft. I can't really remember a period like this one where we've got so many places on the list. The cull was probably deeper than I expected, given where the list's at now and how much we're improving. And I think it's very easy to get rid of players, but it's not necessarily that easy to get really good players in. And so I'm just interested that we've cut so deep, and given that we've got 4 draft picks left, some of which are pretty late, and we have to get at least 4 players onto the main list. I thought we'd go a delisted free agent, but that's looking less and less likely, although some seem to have been taken up in the last few days. I've read just before that Thomas Bugg has been looked at very seriously at Carlton, so maybe there's still a few days to go. But I'm wondering what you guys are thinking, because in order to the minimum that we have to do is take 4 players in the draft onto our main list to bring it to 38. And then I believe we have to have a list of, I don't know whether it's 42 minimum or 44, but we'd be looking at having to go quite deep into the rookie draft, which I find very interesting given a few of the delisted free agents that might still be around. And then, you've got to assume that who you're going to pick up that late in the rookie draft is going to be better than the people you've got rid of. And I'm just really surprised that that's where we're looking at this point.
Grapevine, you did, while It's Time was talking, you asked him a question. Do you want to repeat that?
Who would you have kept It's Time? I'm presuming possibly Dom Tyson. Jesse's obviously in a different category. But Dean Kent, would you have kept him, or Bug?
Who would have I kept? No, it's a really good question. Dom Tyson, as the list has got better and as our skill has got better, there are a few people who've started to stand out in terms of their skills, and I became very frustrated by Dom Tyson, and I'm not sorry that he's gone, and I'm also not sorry that we've got a player that we desperately needed in terms of more or less the swap for Bruce. So, no, I'm not sorry about him going, and there's not a particular player in that that group of players that I would have kept, but I mean, it's really a matter of who is out there that we're going to get that's going to be better than the players we're going to get rid of. So if you look at the bottom end of that, I am a bit sorry about Dean Kent, but I gather that was a bit driven by him and the lack of opportunity and wanting to go into the midfield. I don't think that was ever the type of player that he was, and I think that I'll be interested to see how he goes at St Kilda, but it's a bit like Jeremy Howe leaving Melbourne because he didn't want to play in the back line, and 5 games in, ending up in the back line forever at Collingwood. I think, you might leave a team, but there's no guarantee that the outcome's going to be what you want. I'm not sure that Dean Kent, he doesn't strike me as an on-baller, really. He's more that kind of burst player. But, yeah, I'm sorry that he's gone. I'm very, very happy that Vandenberg didn't go. I'd have been very disappointed if that had happened. But Bug, plays a role. I mean, it's depth, isn't it? It's depth. So there's not any of those players that we've got rid of that that are first 22 players. But having said that, they're depth players, and whoever we get in has got to be, have a great upside to them, I guess, in the next few years. But I feel that we've become a little bit weak in our depth now outside the top 22.
Yeah,
that's my concern.
A Carlton supporter today asked me about Tom Bug. They had read the article that he was training with the Blues, and they said, how is he? And I said, look, I've always liked him, but at the moment he's purely in there as depth if we've got injuries. So I agree with you. I feel that perhaps we might be lacking in depth. That could be an issue, but I don't think... having said that, I don't think we're going to be pushing for premiership success if we've got some of those players that they might have left, the Kents and the Bugs, in the 22.
The other thing is you can't judge it until after the end of the draft and the rookie draft, and when all the time is up for trading and free agent delisting and etc. But also, West Coast last year had 13 changes to their list. That's between 2017 and 18, and went on to win the premiership this year. So making sort of, I don't think the number of changes that we made is so extreme as it might seem, given that, West Coast, proved to be fine with it.
Yeah, no, I that was certainly a case in point. I was really surprised. I did look that up and see that, and they did go very deep, and it worked out extraordinarily well for them. But it was a bit different also because they had a bunch of players that were sort of right at the end of their careers, whereas we've moved them on. And I totally agree with you. I don't have an issue with any of the players that have been, delisted or traded out. I'm just hopeful that the net result, as you say, and we won't know that for a while, is that the list ends up stronger, and so in order for it to end up stronger, we can't really, I wouldn't want to see us recruiting 8 kids who are unlikely to start playing next year. So I'm going to be really intrigued to see how many players that we draft, for instance, might be a couple of those Casey guys, a few of the people that, there might be 18, there might be 23 or 24. I was reading an article about some of the players that are in the VFL, the more mature age players. And I read the name of one guy. He's only 19, but they were a bit surprised he didn't get picked up last year. And he's a ruck forward, a bit like Josh Jenkins, apparently, and we're pretty into him at 19, so he'd have a few years to develop. But, I'm really going to be interested, really, really interested. I'm wondering, have you guys heard anything about that? What's your feeling about where we're at the moment with that?
I'm sort of in the same boat as you. I thought we might have a look at some delisted free agents. I'll ask you: were there any guys that were on the market as a delisted free agent that you would have liked us to have a nibble at?
Look, I'd be in a minority on this, and I can see why we wouldn't have. But I think the upside from if we got Menzel for a small amount of money on a 1-year contract with the quality of his goal kicking ability, I know that it sort of flies in the face of the whole philosophy around our defensive pressure. But I saw an interview with Adam Ramanauskas, his agent, who was saying that a lot of that was fairly harsh because it was the way he was asked to play, which wasn't a defensive role. So I don't know how true that is, but I also read somewhere that he has the worst defensive acts of any player in the entire league as a forward.
Forget Menzel, there was no way Goodwin is ever going to take a player like Menzel.
No.
Just not going to happen.
In the face of the philosophy, but in terms of the skill that he would have brought and the potential there, he'd be one rather than some kid in the fourth round of the rookie draft or something. I would have had a look at him, but not Townsend maybe. And now when I say this, it's really a matter of again looking at we sort of don't know at this point because we don't know what they're thinking. But, the net result you want to see is that the players that come in are better than those or there's a strategy of them in long-term development that's better than any of the delisted free agents at the moment. And we don't know the answer to that. But on the face of it, I know they've looked at, is it Partington there's some talk of, I think the West Coast Eagles guy. I'm not even familiar with him, but I'm not even sure if that's his name, but that's just the only one I'd heard of that we might have any interest in.
Yeah, I'm not too sure about that.
It's a hard one, isn't it?
With the Menzel, I was just going to say, just before we go off the Menzel thing, the only reason I wanted to sort of maybe have a nibble at him was that he's 40 goals a year. We just lost a 40, 50 goal a year player. But then again, I agree with Grapeviney. I don't think maybe he doesn't fit in with the philosophy.
Yeah, and I can see that. But it's just skill. What I'm hoping to see in the next group of players that come in is that what we're going to hear about more than anything is that their skill level is going to raise, the skill level of the team. That's the thing I'm worried about. And on that topic, and just following on from the conversation you guys were having about the captaincy and Nathan Jones, I watched a couple of the replays in the last few weeks of the Essendon game. It was around 6, the Adelaide game, and I must say the thing that I have a real worry about how Nathan Jones is going at the moment. I know he finished 4th in the BNF, but it's just the skill. It's the decision-making and the skill, and particularly that final kick inside the 50, which to me is the last missing plank of our game plan that really needs some work. And I just thought that, when you see those replays, I'm just worried about sorry, 1 second here. About the game starting to maybe getting a little bit past him. I know we can't question his contest, and the thing that worries me about that is he's the absolute heart and soul. I mean, he's the Robbie Flower of this era. It's the romanticism of having Jones there. I can't imagine that not being the case, and I think we've learned our lesson from what happened to James McDonald. That you've got to treat these players with an enormous amount of respect, and no one suffered more than Jonesy has. And I really hope and pray that he kind of comes good a bit, and he seems to know it too. Because I remember hearing Daisy Pearce on SEN. I think it was after the West Coast, the week after the West Coast game, and she was saying she went up after the game as the boundary rider to interview him, and he said to her, "What are you coming up to me for? I've had a really bad game." Sort of talking about that. And so I'm sure he's aware of it, but there's a bit of work to be done on his, his delivery. That's my feeling. And the other player that frustrates me in that level is A&B, who I know is loved because of his effort, but frustrates me.
Yeah, he does.
What about you guys?
Look, with A&B, I think he's more suited as a forward than in the midfield. I think he's better sort of around goals, get him closer to goals. Seems to be able to do that. But yeah, I can see what you're saying. I think with Jonesy, it's I think my heart is leading my head in that argument of what to do with Jonesy. Is there anything else? It's time you want to bring up?
No, not at this stage. I'd be interested to see what you guys. I mean, get your feeling on where we're at with our with what we've done with the list and where we're heading with it, and if you've heard anything about any players that we might be into. Any suggestions?
I haven't heard anything official or otherwise. I haven't heard any snippets. I don't think we might not know until perhaps the boys start training. I think they start training the 1 to 4 years start on Monday. We might know then when someone turns up at training. Grapevine, have you heard any whispers anywhere?
No.
No, I think it's going to be a matter of seeing who turns up on if we've got anyone training with us on Monday that we're not familiar with.
Yeah. No, we'll see. And KK Kolajasny will be going to be very interesting to see how he goes. Very, very hopeful that he's going to be that link man with that, with the good skills leading in. Into the forward, that final kick into the forward of the 50, or if not, if he's in the half-back line, he might release someone like a Salem more up the ground to offer that skill as the delivery inside 50.
Well, if you're talking about delivery inside 50, with the inclusion of Lever coming back into the team, with May going into the team, if Kolajasny can get up and start, playing the form that he had in his first couple of years, and get over the concussion and neck issues that he's had, Bailey Fritsch, I'm sure, will move up the ground, and he's got beautiful delivery. So,
good point. Good point.
So let's hope that happens. But other than that, anything else? It's time before we move on.
No. Just going to be very interested to see how Gary Pert settles in. And whether we start to see some initiatives coming in under his leadership. I'm very excited about him coming in. I just think his expertise in being in a club that had all the facilities that could be state of the art in terms of developing memberships and membership initiatives. It'll be very interesting to see, what he brings to the club in terms of that being the lifeblood of the future of the club, really. So, and of course, what's going to happen with facilities and everything in the next few years. A very exciting combination, not just in what Peter Jackson's achieved with the team and the playing list and the football department and the facilities, etc. But the money that there's suddenly been created right back to the Gardner administration with the Bentley Club and the money that's coming, and the Oakley Club, and this money that we've suddenly got for setting up the future of the club is going to be very exciting to see what the decisions are the next year or two.
Yeah, absolutely great. I think that Pert, I think one of the first things they've got to do, we don't have a back of the jumper sponsor. I think we've lost, was it iSelect?
iSelect, yeah.
So that's a big one. I think he's got to get in. But, the future looks bright, and let's hope it can continue that way. Thank you very much for the call in tonight. It's time.
No worries. And thank you guys for and keep up the good work. Thank you.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay, take care.
That was It's Time, member of the Demonland.com forum. Grapevine. I was just having a look to see what else we can discuss tonight. Look, we've got the draft coming up, and we don't have a pick. When's our first pick? Pick 23. So it's sort of pointless. It's almost like, and I'm sure they've got their, as Josh Mahoney mentioned, they've got their eye on a couple of players, but I don't think it's so far down the pick line that it's going to be hard for us to predict who we're going to get. So we might just have to wait till after the draft, and hopefully we can get on Jason Taylor again like we did last year, and sort of get from the horse's mouth, what's happening there.
Yep.
Was there anything else? Anything you wanted to bring up?
It's pretty quiet days on the board, and bored is the word, really.
Yeah, well,
want it to start again.
That's right. Well, that's what happens this time of year until the draft, until the boys start training, which they do on Monday, as we said. It's sort of the quiet time of the year. All the players are away, and they're all coming back now. And it'll be great. All the track watchers will be back out there on Monday, I'm sure, and in the coming weeks, and we'll bring you as many reports as we can through demonland.com. So stay tuned. All right, I think with that we'll put an end to this. It was always going to be a shorter show. So Grapevine, we'll be back in a couple of weeks. When is the draft?
22nd or 23rd, I think.
Yeah, I think it actually starts on the 22nd, but we won't see any action.
Weeks.
That's right, we won't see any action till the 23rd. So I think that's on a Thursday or something. We'll come on. We'll jump on the week after there, and we'll talk about who we bring in. The new Bailey Fritsch, the new Charlie Spargo. It'll be good. All right. Thank you very much, Grapevine, for joining me tonight. Thank you to Josh Mahoney. Thank you to the Melbourne Football Club for getting us, Josh. And we'll be back in a couple of weeks.
We've got the team, football machine to